The city of Urgell, La Seu d'Urgell, has since ancient times been a crossroads on the routes that traversed and linked the Pyrenees. Over the centuries, it has been both the cradle and the heart of a country. Its streets bear the traces of civilization, like an epic poem that recounts the adventures of the Pyrenees and its people. The little archaeological evidence that has been studied indicates that in Roman times the plain of Urgellet was home to several agricultural settlements of an indeterminate size. Situated on a fluvial terrace between the rivers Segre and Valira, the plain was thus a fertile and well-irrigated area. Sites that are reasonably close, such as Goleró on the Serra del Cadí, indicate that the Urgellet was well connected to the Roman world. In fact, it was on a crossroads which linked Lleida, with Julia Libyca, Llivia, and the Roussillon plain. In the 6th century, the new Visigothic rulers pushed for the creation of the bishopric of Urgell, something which would forever mark the history of the territory. It seems that behind the new bishopric lay the intent or the need for the fledgling monarchy to guarantee control over the Pyrenees. The first documented bishop of Urgell was Bishop Justus, who participated at a council in Toledo in 531. The creation of the new bishopric demanded the construction of a cathedral at Urgell, the first of 4 that we know about. We don't know exactly where it was built, but it was probably on the same site as the current cathedral. The cathedral became a powerful cultural focus with notable figures such as Bishop Justus himself and Bishop Felix, who around the year 800 engaged in debate with the leading intellectuals of Carolingian Europe. During the 9th century, the Pyrenees came under Carolingian influence. The Carolingian monarchs appointed the Counts of Urgell as their own agents in the region. The cathedral was destroyed in a Saracen raid in 793 and would be rebuilt, this time definitely on the same location as the current one. The town, which grew up around the cathedral, would in future be known as the Old Town. Ermengol, Bishop of Urgell from 1010, instigated an ambitious program of reforms that would change the face of La Seu d'Urgell forever. On the one hand, he reformed its church with the establishment of a regular canon and incorporated the jurisdiction over La Seu d'Urgell within the domain of the church. Motivated by the desire to promote the episcopal town, he created a weekly market and a fair, the first documented on the Iberian Peninsula. At the same time, and to encourage communication with La Seu, he sponsored the construction of bridges and roads throughout the region. Bishop Ermengol, elevated to sainthood shortly after his death, initiated the construction of a new cathedral in La Seu d'Urgell and surrounded it with a series of churches in the area. San Miquel, San Pere, Santa Eulalia, and possibly San Sepulcre grew up around the main temple with the intention of bringing prestige to the episcopal center and possibly to attract pilgrims. And it was he, Bishop Ermengol, who was the first Catalan bishop to undertake the Way of St. James. With the enthusiasm generated by the fairs and markets, La Seu d'Urgell became a center of great economic importance. During the 12th and 13th centuries, the population increased and began to specialize in the trade of meat, wool, and leather. At the same time, the hostility of neighboring feudal lords grew, and in 1196, the Count of Foix set fire to La Seu and plundered the cathedral. However, the city would recover and its fortification was begun with the construction of the first walled enclosure. Between the 13th and 14th centuries, the city established itself as a large urban center. The bishops were the feudal lords of the city and had their own officers who acted on their behalf. The residents, for their part, were represented by 4 consuls appointed annually under the framework of the General Council, which included the heads of household, in an exercise in municipal autonomy that continues to expand and was regulated in 1430 with the enactment of the usances or privileges of the city of Urgell. The new cathedral, begun by Bishop Ott at the beginning of the 12th century and interrupted with its sacking by the Count of Foix, defined the layout and characteristics of the town in a decisive manner. Around it was the cloister, the canonical rooms and service areas, as well as the series of churches that surrounded it. The bishop would also have had his residence next to the complex. From the 13th century, the Carrer dels Canonges became the busiest axis of the city. Closed to the north and to the south by the gates of Andorra and Soldevilla, the workshops and studios of artisans were concentrated here, and in the upper part, the homes of the canons once they had stopped living in a community in the cathedral area at the end of the 13th century. In the lower part of the street, next to the Soldevilla entrance gate, there was a salt store where the salt, essential for the conservation and processing of meat, was kept, having arrived from Cardona. At the end of the Carrer dels Canonges, a butchery district grew up with the maille, or abattoir, and a renderers, and where there was a lime store which was used to dispose of the organic remains of the animals. The barbican of the maille enclosed this new neighborhood, but the dynamism of the city meant the construction of new homes outside the walls. This new area, which was named the Soldevilla district, began to spread progressively southwards. The sustained growth of the city during the 13th century caused the development of the area situated to the east of the Carrer dels Canonges, which had been the main ditch or moat, part of the 13th century defenses, and which became the current Carrer Major. This 13th century wall would become the party wall for the new dwellings in districts of Tredòs to the west and Soldevilla to the south. In the northern sector around the church of San Miquel, the urban fabric became denser. We find ourselves in the Capdevila district, which also saw the growth and general activity of the population. The workshops of the craftsmen stood side by side with flour mills, which harnessed water from the canals coming from the Valera River. In the south, the old Plaza de la Boveria is where the livestock fair was held. Outside the city walls, the Dominican convent, dating from the 13th century, was demolished and moved within the city walls for greater safety. In the middle of the 14th century, the city was a dense labyrinth of narrow streets, and this is where hundreds of people lived who, serving a wide area, carried out the most diverse trades: tanners, barbers, saddlers, butchers, physicists, teachers of the Talmud, doctors, notaries, lawyers, gentlemen. They lived side by side with those who carried out activities in the area and with the floating population, those passing through or connected to the fairs and seasonal activities. The documents that have survived tell us about the dynasties of residents from the past. Their echoes still resonate among us. Here lived the Santa Grata family, Ramon, Huguet, Ferré, and Graciona, a prosperous family of drapers. The Sormats, 3 generations of traders. The Sartre brothers, who bought and sold land and built and traded with the participation of their family members. Abraham Yeo Cohen, head of a Jewish family firmly established in the city of Urgell, dedicated to commerce and livestock markets in the region and in Andorra. Astruc de Maceres, an active Jewish banker, moneylender, who also became the owner of several properties. Guillem de Perarua, the principal stonemason of La Seu, who worked hard and was put in charge of contracts for the works and for the management of materials, workers, apprentices, and extraction permits for quarries and sandpits in order to carry out all kinds of works. The Villanova Ros, the most powerful butchers of the period. The Treballa family, Amblar, Ramon, and Amblarda, a well-to-do family with several businesses and activities related to milling. Blanca de Beissola, the heiress of the Beissola farm, owner of a large plot, which, having been sold in parcels, created a village to the west of the city. An influential heiress who passed on her name to her children ahead of that of her husband. Guillem Fàbrega, merchant, dedicated to buying and selling real estate and to land and property speculation. Of these and many others, their memory is stored in the archives. It is as if they were still here, sitting next to us at the table. In the middle of the 14th century, La Seu d'Urgell was a dynamic city that exerted its power as a capital over a significant portion of the Catalan Pyrenees. Trade and production related to livestock farming, meat, salted goods, leather, wool, and cheese drove the prosperity of the city. The town center was firmly established, and the city would forever show the traces of these years of plenty. Today, the city of Urgell has become the heir to this Pyrenean and medieval adventure that drives us forcefully towards new adventures in the future.